Dan the Wheelman here with some more AJACecoMonth content. What is AJACecoMonth? Well, myself and my colleagues that are part of the Automobile Journalists Association of Canada, AJAC, are treating September as Eco Month, whereby we drive a bunch of alternatively powered vehicles, you know, PHEVs, hybrids, EVs, stuff like that. And we write stories about those, and we write stories about various sustainable activities going on in the automotive world. So far, you would have seen me driving a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle in the form of the 2021 Toyota RAV4 Prime. More recently, I drove a BEV, battery electric vehicle, or full EV if you'd rather, in the form of the 2020 Nissan Leaf. And today I'm in an FCEV, a fuel cell electric vehicle, in the form of the 2019 Toyota Mirai. There's no 2020 version of this car. There is a 2021 coming out, but for now we're in the 2019 here. So basically what the Mirai does is it's got basically a hydrogen power system. It's fueled by hydrogen, and the hydrogen is stored and then turned into electricity, basically, which is then stored in a battery and used to power the Mirai's EV motor, just like your Toyota Prius hybrid, for example. So let's go for a drive and see what the next frontier of alternatively powered vehicles looks like. So this is hydrogen power. Doesn't sound that different than a regular EV vehicle. Then again, why should it? Again, this is an EV vehicle in that it uses EV motors for power. The hydrogen is just the fuel, really. So sounds pretty similar to your Prius Primes or RAV4 Primes, whatever you want to call it. It's good for 151 horsepower and 247 pound-feet of torque. Those are not huge numbers. This is definitely not a high-performance vehicle when it comes to driving dynamics, especially considering it weighs almost 2,000 kilos, which is a lot. There's a lot going on over here. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But it is spacious. I mean, when I first encountered the Mirai a couple of years back, I thought it kind of looks like a Prius, especially like the Prius Prime. So I thought, well, I guess it's Prius size, but it's not. It's actually more Camry size. In fact, it's bigger than the Camry in a lot of ways, which I found surprising. But then again, kind of needs to be, because there's a lot going on. You've got your EV motor up front. You have your hydrogen tanks, 2 of them for a total of about 120 liters of hydrogen, 1 underneath the back seat, 1 in the trunk. And then you've got your batteries, your fuel cell stacks, which are kind of in the floor here behind me. And you've got a battery behind the seats as well. So they've had to stuff a lot in here. It adds a lot of weight, and it seems to be affecting headroom a little bit too. Like, I've got this hat on here. It's not a small hat, but I've also been testing the small Mercedes CLA this week, and I can fit in there no problem with this hat. On this one here, not quite as much, because the seat position is quite high because they've had to stuff so much underneath here. And that also affects other things. There's very little storage in the center console here. You've got a bin here, which is nice, but it's kind of shallow, and it's a wireless charge pad, so you've got your wireless device in there. What else are you going to put in there? And you have your glove box down here too, which has got some space, but a couple of cup holders here, thin door pockets here, and that's it. So, and you've got a bin between the two rear seats actually too. In fact, the two rear seats are kind of cool. They're bucket seats. There's no third row, there's no third seat back there. It's like two bucket seats, which is kind of cozy for rear seat occupants, I guess, but you know, you lose the space for the third person. But as you I think you can see right there, or right there, yeah, there it is. I have my baby seat in there as well. There, as you can see it right there. There we go. I have my baby seat in there as well, and it was okay for her. My 3-year-old, she fit in there without too much trouble, so that's great too. So, but the trunk, of course, also the space of the trunk's been compromised by having all that kind of running gear. So, I want to keep that in mind, but. That's not to say I don't like driving this. I actually do. The center of gravity is quite low for the same reasons I explained before. All the weight is kind of pushed low in the chassis. And the handling's pretty good. It rides really, really well. It's incredibly quiet, and it's pretty luxurious feeling. I've got leather seats in here. You know, I've got a touch interface in here, which is nice. Looking a little bit on the old school side these days, I must admit. Kind of weird to say it about a touch surface, but it seems that display screens are really making a comeback in a big way. I just did a story about the new Jeep Wagoneer. It's got like 6 different touchscreen displays in it, so that's kind of the way of the world, it seems. So this touch surface here is a bit kind of weird, but I've also got the kind of double-tiered display system here. My gauge cluster is actually a little kind of set of screens underneath the hood here, just the base of the windshield, which means it doesn't get in the way of my view forward, which is nice. I've got nothing in front of me here, so it's a nice view out forward and a nice, pretty good view out over my shoulders as well. So, but I really do like driving it. It's luxurious in here. It really is, and you really get the chance you're driving something futuristic. So that's cool. Because you get the advantages of this, just like you do with a lot of EVs. It's a 1-speed direct drive transmission, so your launch, is actually really quite good. It's a big heavy vehicle, not that much power, but off the line you get some good zip. Now it tends to kind of run out of energy. Well, not really run out of energy. That's not correct really in this circumstance. It tends to run out of kind of breath, I guess, as power gets going a little more, speeds get higher, you don't have as much passing ability, kind of at speed and stuff. But in the city, and if you want something zippy and darty, well, you've got some quick performance with this as well. I think it's a really cool system, and it's a drivetrain that is perfect for what this vehicle is meant to be good at, and that's taking people through the city efficiently. It's not supposed to be a sports sedan of any kind, and it isn't, but it does the rest of that stuff quite well. So how does it all work then, this hybrid system? Well, you got a couple of tanks full of hydrogen fuel behind me here. They're heavily reinforced. They're made of carbon fiber. A lot of questions when it comes to hydrogen power is the stability of hydrogen. How do we make sure it's safe? But Toyota has once you compress it enough to fit what you need to get any kind of range at all, you need to compress it down and fit it in these tanks behind me here. And Toyota assures us, and so is Hyundai, who also has a hydrogen-powered vehicle in the Nexo, that the way they've built their tank stuff is very, very safe in any kind of crash. Anyway, so it's a carbon fiber tank that's full. That hydrogen gas then meets with oxygen, basically, and through electrolysis, really, it forms electricity in a fuel stack system, or a fuel cell stack system, at which point the battery that's behind the back seats here stores energy that's built up. Then that energy is used to power the wheels and various accessories in the vehicle, just like any other EV vehicle at that point. And as mentioned before, you get regeneration from braking and coasting. So as with any other kind of EV style vehicle, we want to know about range. Toyota says that on a full tanks, I should say, of hydrogen, you get 500 kilometers thereabouts of range. When I got into this vehicle, it had a full tank of hydrogen, or tanks again, Only about 329 kilometers of predicted range, though. And remember, that's just a prediction based on what the driver, how they drive, because the more aggressively you drive, the more fuel you use. So if the person that had this car before me was driving aggressively, it's going to take the computer doesn't know that we got different drivers here, so it's going to take what the other guy was doing or girl was doing and use that as a predictor. So I started with 329 kilometers on a full tank. I've so far driven 134 kilometers, but I'm only down to 242 kilometers. So I've used less than 100 kilometers technically, even though I've driven 134 here. So, you know, you've got just like an EV or a hybrid, you've got brake regeneration for that. You have coasting, all that kind of stuff. There's a B mode here, which ups the ante when it comes to regen. So very similar. Oh, by the way, the shift lever here is very Prius-like. You might have seen that in the B-roll, in the clips just before this. So keep that in mind. It's a bit finicky, but whatever. So it's actually quite good for range. I mean, I haven't even gone down to half a tank of hydrogen yet, and I've still got 241, it says now, left. Now, of course, most of my driving has been in the city, which is kind of where vehicles like this are meant to excel. The more braking you do, which you do a lot of in the city, the more regen you get for your powertrain, so on. So that's maybe part of it, but that's not bad. I'm actually quite impressed so far with the range I've seen from this here, which is really cool. So that's all well and good, but what about filling these hydrogen-powered vehicles? How does that work? Well, we're going to show you that, because in Vancouver, there are a couple of spots to fill these up. I'm actually going to be pulling up to one right here in a couple of minutes, so stay tuned as we have a look at what that looks like, what that's all about. So this right here, as you can see, is a hydrogen charge station. So what we're going to do now is we're going to kind of go through the motions of what it's like to charge the Mirai, see how much that's going to cost me. I'm curious about that, and how many, I guess it's probably in liters. I'm not exactly sure how they size. I think it might be in liters, but we're going to find out here. So we'll do that, and I'll check back with you guys when it's all done. It's just like any other gas tank. This, and pop that out of there. You're off to the races. So really, filling up your hydrogen car is basically the same as filling up your gas car. You got your credit card, goes in the machine here, activates, and the only difference is you actually hook up your car before you bring your credit card through. I guess that's a bit different, but this gets hooked up right here. You run this through here. It's a digital receipt only. Try to save paper, I guess. So they'll email your receipt when it's done. Type in your PIN pad here, and you're good to go. Just like any other gas. It even looks like a normal gas, kind of gas pump, doesn't it? So it's kind of cool, actually. Interesting how kind of the same it really is. So I had about just over a quarter of a tank gone, so that's how much I had to put in here. And I've been timing myself to see how long it took to fill. And it took me about 3.5, closer to 4 minutes to fill my tank from 3/4 to a quarter. So that's probably a little bit slower than it would take to fill, a gas tank in a regular car. I've actually never timed that before, so really, I've never had to. But there you go. So it's we're all finished up here. Cost me $24 for 1.9, call it 2 kilograms of hydrogen, and that got me a quarter tank. So you're looking for a full fill, I guess. Yeah, you're probably looking at about $100. But the thing of that is, I talked to you before about how much mileage I was getting out of the Mirai. So while it's a little more expensive on a per kind of unit basis as far as the actual gas costs, the efficiency is quite good in the Mirai. I told you how I drove 100 kilometers and only showed on my Odo or on my trip computer here that I'd only driven about 70. So I'd actually earned back some kind of juice through various regenerations. So remember, while you do need hydrogen to run the Mirai, that's just the starting point. After that, it's all stored as energy, in EV energy in the battery pack, so it becomes an EV vehicle. That's just the starting off point, the hydrogen. The power itself is done from electricity, and if you drive properly, you don't even have to really hypermile. If you drive in the city a lot or whatever like that, you get the energy, the EV gets recharged on its own, and the hydrogen you can kind of, it doesn't have as much work to do as otherwise. So it's it's an interesting hybrid system. Really, it is a hybrid. That's what it is, and it's an interesting kind of take on the hybrid system is a hydrogen powered vehicle. So kind of a cool little, the more you know situation going on here on this test of the 2019 Toyota Mirai. And of course, as they find less expensive ways to fabricate the hydrogen in order to get it usable for cars and find better ways to transport it, the more they have to do, likely the less it's going to have to cost the end user to fill up. Right now, hydrogen is quite specialized. I talked to you before that it costs me about $25 to fill just over a quarter tank of hydrogen fuel. So that leads to about $100 on a full fill. That's $100 for 122 liters. So, I mean, that's not really, that's how much space I have in my 2 tanks back here. That's not horrible, and not to mention that you can avoid filling quite regularly if you just drive a little more efficiently, right? So you know, it's not inexpensive to fill it, for sure. It's definitely not cheap, and you have to think that as more and more, as hydrogen vehicles start to proliferate, hydrogen itself should be less expensive when it comes to filling up. I've sampled a few hydrogen-powered cars in my time, or FCEVs, and overall, I'm a fan of hydrogen tech. I think it's a cool idea. I like the knowledge or the kind of peace of mind that comes with the fact that all I've got that I'm producing as I drive this vehicle is kind of like water vapor. It's kind of funny, the Hyundai Nexo hydrogen vehicle will actually tell you when you stop it how much air you've cleaned, because dirty air comes in, gets cleaned through the system in order to power the vehicle, and gets fired out clean the other way. So it's kind of cool that. So I like that. Hydrogen is a very, very plentiful element. It's the most plentiful element in the world, I think, or somewhere along those lines. So it's doable, but of course it's all about the transportation of it, the storage of it, both in the gas station like you just saw, or the hydrogen fill station, and in the vehicle itself. And then there's of course we talk about the transportation and the energy that's required to form hydrogen gas that can be used to then fill up a vehicle. That has an effect or an impact on the environment around it as well. But I like hydrogen tech because it's overall a pretty clean technology once it's in the car and once you start driving as the end user. So that's great. Now, as far as the Mirai goes, and hydrogen is, you know, it is taking its time to catch on, though. I mean, in Canada, only in Quebec and BC can you fill your hydrogen car by yourself. If you have a hydrogen vehicle anywhere else in Canada, the only way to get them filled is if you bring it to a kind of a specialist, which is obviously a whole nother kind of level. Oh, look at that charger. Speaking of environmentally friendly cars, a nice 1970 Charger just drove by. Oh, man. Anyway, you have to get them filled professionally, which, of course, adds a whole nother level to the ownership of a hydrogen-powered vehicle. So they're taking a little while to catch on, but they're here. Hyundai's got theirs now. Honda's got a hydrogen-powered version of their Clarity sedan. I don't think it's available in Canada just yet. If it is or if it isn't, I will put that on the screen here. You'll know. But they've got that, so it is coming. And Toyota has a new Clarity coming out, as I talked about. Toyota has a new Mirai coming out, I should say. As I mentioned in the intro to this, in 2021, there is a new Mirai. I was in Japan at the Tokyo Auto Show when they presented it. Very cool vehicle. This, as you saw from the images before, is a very futuristic looking thing. The new Mirai coming out is a little more classy looking. It's more Lexus than Prius, really. And it also makes use, it's a little bit bigger, so they found a way to take up less room in the body with all that running gear. I don't know if the battery, this is a nickel metal hydride battery. The lithium-ion batteries that you see in many EVs and hybrids today are a little lower profile than nickel metal hydride are. I don't know what the new Mirai has. I tried to haven't been able to find out. If it has a lithium-ion battery, that saves space as well. So they are coming out with a new one. And if they can take care of the issues that you have with space in the vehicle, they could have a real hit on their hands. I mean, everything else with the Mirai is great. The powertrain is fine. It's not even the powertrain that's the problem. It's the other stuff. It's the fact that, like I said, the center console is kind of old school looking. It's got that weird dongle shifter that the Prius has, which I've never really liked. And of course, the room inside is a bit snugger than it looks from the outside. So you never really want that from your car. So that's not really the hydrogen's problem, unless you want to say, well, what about all the running gear for the hydrogen? That's why it's smaller inside. Well, yes and no. I mean, I guess there's arguments for both ways there. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see what the new Mirai is all about. If we see more hydrogen-powered vehicles, I'd love to try that Clarity one time. Hopefully I'll be able to. I've tried the Nexo from Hyundai before, so I'm interested in the tech. I think it's a very interesting kind of new frontier for alternatively fueled or powered vehicles. I'd like to see where it goes from here. So for now, though, that's it for my review of the 2019 Toyota Mirai. I hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do. If not, no hard feelings. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DanTheWheelman. And look for the full review and more photos of the Mirai on VicariousMag.com soon. So thank you for tuning into this. And until next time, sayonara, folks.